Welcome to Ron, and please, you take the word from here.
Thank you, Torsten and Liza. So I'm Ron Quartel. I'm in Seattle. It's a hazy day here. It's morning. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. We've got the haze from the Seattle, the California fires. Unfortunately, the smoke's come all the way up here. But the sun's out, and which is a good thing for Seattle, where it rains most of the time. Well, thank you for coming to this session. I've got, it's pretty slide heavy, but the slides are going to go pretty quick. And I do much better with face-to-face and interactive. So this is my first time presenting in this format. And please, let's see how close we can get to an interactive feel as possible. So welcome to this session on Fast Agile. Fluid Scaling Technology is what FAST stands for. And I guess the theme of this session is scaling Agile with complexity conscious mindset, which is kind of key to really understanding FAST. So the short answer of what is FAST, Fluid Scaling Technology is a system for organic collaboration on creative endeavors from the small scale to the large. There's a link to the website there, and that kind of explains a little more. Do we really need another Agile framework? And that was the last thing I ever wanted to do. Like we've got a plethora already. So what problem is FAST really trying to solve? I'm going to skip this next one. Okay, so here's the agenda. Between the sections, we're going to have breakouts where we can discuss topics. So it's not just about sitting here looking at slides and listening to me. So we're going to talk about, well, I'm going to tell you who I am, about the why of Fast Agile. I'm going to spend a good chunk of time on that section, because it's really important that I get you in a certain mindset before I tell you what Fast Agile is, because otherwise a lot of people get stuck and they're like, that can't possibly work, because Fast is very different probably to anything else that you've heard about. And so I need to get into why it's different first and why it could work. So after why, we'll have a breakout, then I'll go into what, then I'll actually tell you what Fast Agile is. And then that raises a bunch of questions. So about, well, how does this work? How does that work? So then we'll go into the how of Fast Agile and where to find out more and emergence. The final section is Q&A, which I call the emergent section. So I've left a lot of space for questions and answers because FAST raises a lot of questions. And as I said before, I prefer interactive. So who is Ron Quartel? So I'm a software developer. I have been since my teens. I guess it's still in my blood. In 2002, I learned about Agile when my team moved to extreme programming. I fell in love with Agile. I promised myself I'll only ever work in Agile environments ever again, and I've stayed true to that. So my career has gone through many phases. I put there I can wear many hats. A dev manager, these are different roles I've played in the past: dev manager, consultant, Agile coach, technical coach, pre-sales engineer, trainer, TPM, and entrepreneur, a short period of being part of a startup. I've highlighted Agile coach and technical coach there because right now I'm in the role of a technical coach, and Agile coach is highlighted because it comes very clear in the story of the birth of FAST. I was actually in the Agile coach role. I also mentioned this book here, 7-Day Weekend, which I read at 2003, and I mentioned that because I traced the ideas in that book. I think was really the starting seed of what turned into who I am today and what FAST is. So in 2014 was really when I had this flash of inspiration around Agile scaling. So let's go into the why of fast agile. What problem is fast trying to solve? I found this image slide out on the internet, which I think kind of captures what I feel about agile and where it's gone and what needs fixing. I think corporate agile needs fixing, and as does scaled agile. I think there's improvements that can be made, and I think fast is really trying to solve that. So my first question is, does Scrum scale? And I would say no. And so Scrum and extreme programming, they only outline how a single cross-functional team works. In order to scale, we have to try other things. And so, in early days of Agile, that was the big question: how do we scale this? How do we scale this? Because we knew it was working at the team level, but we didn't yet know how to scale it. So what do we actually mean by scale? So here's my answer. As soon as you have more than one team working against a common problem or backlog, you've hit agile scaling. So as soon as you're in that environment, so that's just 2 teams, and you're going to go into multiple teams, then it raises a bunch of questions. So at this point, I want to run a little exercise. I've got a tool called Poll Everywhere. I want you to put in this word cloud, what are your feelings and challenges around, oh, that's great, someone's already populating there. What are your feelings and challenges around Agile at scale? Yeah, untested technology. I think we did okay though, given it could have gone a lot worse. So I've got on the screen here some of the words: confused, difficult, microservices, dependencies. Dependencies huge there, right in the middle. Communication. Some of the biggest ones. Here we go: complexity, dependencies, communication, conflict, friction, Scrum of Scrums, complex. Thank you. So they are, yeah, so these are again, some of the words that come up, or some of the questions that I get, that you think of the complexity, right? How do we make the teams up? How do we do forecasting? How do we synchronize the work? How do we track the work? How do we maintain consistency? How do we plan? And this one at the top left, sharing specialty. How do we share specialities? Like if I've got 2 UX people and I need that across 4 teams, how do we do that? And I want to highlight that one in particular because FAST is particularly good at answering that question. So here's Hendrik Nieberg, stating the same things, stuff you need to figure out. So here's what we've done, and I want to, anyone here that, I'm glad that the title of this group, is around complexity. So I'm hoping that most people kind of understand complexity, when I mean by complex and complicated. So is this complicated or complex? Complicated or complex? I think I describe this as complicated, right? Because I can decompose it. There's so much moving parts. There is an element of complexity in there, but I think what we've done is to go with, we've tried to solve this, a complex problem using complicated thinking. So how do we avoid this? So maybe it's time to try a different paradigm that isn't built on Scrum. So we've said Scrum doesn't scale on its own. We have to do something else. And here's some examples of things that we can try. But maybe there's a way of not using Scrum, and by moving away from Scrum, it might actually make things, the scaling question, easier. So this was the state of mind I was in 2014. That wasn't, that's not an actual picture of me in 2014. And New Orleans, or they say Nolans here, and I was at the Scrum Gathering, a conference, and day 3 of that conference was an OpenSpace event. So that's the image in the bottom left there. And at this OpenSpace event, I was sitting there just watching events unfold. I was very much in butterfly mode, because I was exhausted from presenting the previous day. So I'm like, you know, I'm just going to sit and watch and be a butterfly. I'm not going to actively participate. And maybe because I was in that passive mode, I was very familiar with OpenSpace. But in that passive mode, I just sat and watched, and they finished populating the marketplace. And I went, well, you know, this is remarkable. In 20 minutes, 800 people have just self-organized a one-day conference. When do you ever see 800 people self-organize something in 20 minutes? The power of OpenSpace struck me, and I thought, you know what? Why aren't we using this as a way to solve the Agile at scale problem? This is something that is scalable, and it matches my Agile values, which, you know, those previous slides kind of don't. There's a smell in there around Agile at scale, which I'm like, smarter people are working on this, and I'm going to stay focused on the team level because I know that works. I feel comfortable there. Something's not sitting right about these Agile at scale. So I'm going to stay at the team level, but this is my, you know what? I think there's something in here around OpenSpace. And so that was the birth of an idea. That was my eureka moment. And in fact, I went immediately from butterfly to like, I need to host a session. Why don't we use OpenSpace as a way to scale Agile? And I got very excited. And that idea just stuck with me, and I couldn't let it go. So that was 2014. By 2015, I kind of put a framework together, and I presented it at Agile Roots Conference, which is in Utah, and it's called Agile Roots because that was where the Agile Manifesto was kind of came to life in Utah. So I presented the concept there, and someone in the audience came up to me and said, you know, we've just been through a safe transformation, and it was hell. And I wish I knew about fast Agile. This makes sense. I wish we'd done this because what you've done is created a complex adaptive system. I'm like, I have? Oh, okay, what's that? So that was my introduction to this concept of complex adaptive systems. And I started studying more and more and got to understand the beauty of OpenSpace and what it stands for. So by 2016, I'm working at a very traditional company, an insurance company in the Pacific Northwest. And we actually got to put fast in practice, which is where the framework kind of really started evolving. Because like going from theory to practice, you're like, well, maybe this is how things go. So I think this is the concepts that I want to get over to you. Before I tell you anything more about what fast is, I want you to get into the right mindset, because if I can get into this mindset, then you might go, yeah, this could work. So I believe that we're in a transition right now that requires a certain mindset to thrive. And that transition is we're going from the age of mass production, and this is the very Taylorist industrial age, it's post-industrial age, you know, the factory mindset, command and control, to the age of disruption. And these are just a handful of books. Like if you just go to Amazon, say Age of Disruption, bam, there's so many books on this right now. And we can see that in this age of disruption is showing up in many areas, of which one is the age of how long a company exists for. So these larger companies, they used to run for longer periods, and the S&P 500 index is you know, one measure. But creative destruction is accelerating, and it's projected that the age of a company will you know, reduce down to 12 years by 2027, down from 33 in 1964. So it is affecting our organization. So we need to change the way we work and think about work and organize work. So to thrive in this age of disruption, I think requires a new way of thinking. And the people that can think that way are making the transition. So we're going from mass production mindset, which I think fits in the complicated space. This is the Cynefin model. I'm hoping most of you are familiar with it. I'm not going to talk too much about it because that's a whole topic in itself, but this represents 4 states. that kind of relate to complexity. So the mass production mindset, I believe, sits in the complicated space. Or what we need to do is to get to move into complex space, which is the age of disruption mindset. So we need to know about complex adaptive systems. They're the only ones that can really thrive. Reason I throw this image up here, reinventing organizations, is because I've used two colors here. So mass production mindset, I've made orange. Age of disruption mindset, I've made teal. So you're going to see me use those colors throughout here. I don't want to go too deep into the concepts of teal. But if you read Reinventing Organizations, you understand that those terms relate to various states or mindsets, the stages of evolution that an organization can be in. Orange is very much the over there in the right, which I feel is very much over in the right in that complicated space. Orange is any traditional large company that you think of right now. We'll go back 10 years. 90% of companies are still orange. So teal is kind of a new brave world that we're moving into. So I also feel that Scrum kind of sits here, and you'll see. I know when I did my Scrum training, they spoke about how Scrum helps pull from complex into complicated. I've also heard Dave Snowden talk about that, and I can see what they mean. But remember, Scrum doesn't scale. I think fast goes deeper. Fast is set firmly in this space between complex and chaotic. And I think that's helpful in this new age, and I'm hoping that this will come clear. So the age of disruption, we want to sit over in that space there. I'm going to switch back here. If you notice, fast just sits on between chaos and complex. And you're like, what do you mean you sit between chaos and complex? So I'm hoping everyone here really understands the differences between what chaos is and complex. And the word chaos, now we understand, chaos theory and complexity theory. Chaos isn't a bad word, right? Chaos is a state that has its own uses and benefits, and you actually want chaos, is what we're finding. So you need an element of chaos, because chaos is actually where ingenuity, new discoveries, that's kind of where that happens in that space. So you really want to be surfing on the edge of chaos. As I, started discovering, or researching more, all of these books started coming up. Here's another one. So Mr. Kaufman here, author of this book, says that a signal of corporate success in this new age we're in is indicating if a corporation is finally poised between order and chaos, is in that place. So this gentleman here is Harrison Owen. That's a picture I actually took. I got to meet him in person, which is great because this guy's my idol and my hero, since he's the father and inventor of OpenSpace. And this is a quote from Harrison. So in his book, The Power of Spirit, he talks about different states of organizations. So Teal talks about states of organizations. Harrison Owen's got a model as well. And I think they map together. So the orange model in Teal, I would say, is what Harrison Owen calls the proactive organization. So this is what most organizations still are, right? They're a well-managed organization where control is the most important thing and chaos is the enemy. So this is where we are over there on the right in the complicated space. Now we want to get over to the left into this complex environment. So Owen talks about the proactive organization. I've made it orange there. So where he's saying we should go to is this interactive organization. So we go from proactive to interactive. So proactive means I need to get in front. If I make this plan, I'm going to win this portion of the market. If I do this, then that. So if I can stay in front, if I can be proactive, where he's saying that's where you have the illusion that you can control. we need to go to more interactive space where we're part of the dance, part of the game. So we need to move these interactive organizations, which is where we're actually harnessing chaos and we're embracing complexity. So I've included another book there by D. Hock. He calls it the chaotic organization, another kind of discovery when I was researching. And he describes his experience of creating an organization, which uses a lot of the concept of FAST. Another great author on this topic, and a switch over to the next concept, is order, natural order, or order from chaos. And this I learned through Margaret Wheatley, discovering order in a chaotic world. So under the right conditions, chaos actually leads to order. And so this is another reason that we can harness chaos. If we need to like create a reordering, and this is what happens at an OpenSpace events, doesn't it? We go, okay, now go. I have no idea what's going to happen. No one knows what's going to happen. So we actually purposely kick off a chaotic event. And out of that chaos comes order, right? Because in 20 minutes, we've gone from chaos to order. So there is a relationship between these. So here are the kind of characteristics. I'm not going to read all of these, but these are the characteristics as you move from this age of mass production to the age of disruption, and how your mindset needs to change and how you start thinking of things. And these things over on the left, these are all embedded in FAST. This is what FAST is designed for. And I feel that a lot of what we're doing in Agile at Scale right now is still embedded too far in the right, over here in the age of mass production. In particular, I want to pull out deterministic and reductionist, which are very closely linked to the next one down there, which is project management, traditional project management. So they sit over there in the right. So what do I mean by determinism? A deterministic system is a system which no randomness is involved in the future state. A deterministic model will always produce the same output from a given starting condition. So this is what companies want to be. They want to be in this deterministic state. So here's an example of what I mean by reductionist and deterministic over there on the right. So apologies for this section is a little long. This is the longest section, but I really want to get you in this mindset. We've only got a couple more slides and then we'll break into discussion. So deterministic, if I can determine the size of each component via estimation and the correct sequence of steps to ensure parallel effort, I can determine when things will get done. This is what we believe over with this project management mindset. And these are the words underneath, right, which I think relate to that: velocity, big room planning, Fibonacci sequence, story pointing, estimation, relative estimation. So these are terms and concepts which have become kind of a collective consciousness that exists in Agile, which is, I think, is also anchoring us back. And an example of reductionist, which should be orange, I've left it as teal. If I could reduce the challenge down to its component parts, I have a plan to follow, right? So if I can go, hey, if we get all of these epics and I can break these down into features and I can break down all the stories and size all the stories, bam, there we go. There's our plan. All I have to do is action all those stories. So we've taken, some good ideas from Agile and turned it into, or used it in an orange way of thinking, or a mass production mindset way of thinking. So this is what it ends up look like. This determinism and illusion of control. So that image on the left there is from a tool called Jira Align. This is mapping out the dependencies between teams. This is the kind of mess that we've got ourselves into by thinking that we can work our way out of this. Now, the image on the right, I want to point out, look how many roles there mention manager. Look at how we're trying to manage this system, manage the heck out of this system. And really, the main thing I want to point out here is look at sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, and we've got 4 teams working there. Now, they all seem to start at the same point and then stop at a certain point. So in this ideal model, yay, by the end of sprint 3, we will have this thing that we're going to launch to market. What happens come sprint 4? So what are team 2, team 3, and team 4 doing when they're finished? Are they able to actually start at that point, right? So this is such a simplified view, but we know it doesn't work that way. But we've fooled ourselves. We think that we can orchestrate our way out of this. So this idea of reductionism has given us an illusion of control. Hey, if I can size all of these things, now I know exactly when things are done, right? Here's a complete backlog, fully sized. Are those sizes correct and accurate? Of course they are. Is there anything going to change in there? Of course not. So maybe we're trying too hard, I think, and there are better ways to manage complex systems. So I think we're trying to manage a complex, and here's an image of a complex adaptive system, a school of fish. Enter OpenSpace technology. So I've kind of taken you from the mindset of the old world. Here's a new mindset, and I think OpenSpace really highlights it. If you haven't been to an OpenSpace event, this may not make sense. So I encourage you to go, if you can, go to an OpenSpace conference or an OpenSpace event. OpenSpace really represents a complex adaptive system that harnesses chaos for innovation and the emergence of natural order. And when you look at OpenSpace, you go, well, how? OpenSpace is conceptually simple. So there's a relationship between simple and complex, it turns out. This book here, Simple Rules, How to Thrive in a Complex World, goes into that relationship. Here's an actual example of birds flocking. So these are starlings. This image here isn't Photoshop. This is an actual image. Isn't that incredible? And this is what happens. You kind of recognize a complex system because it takes on a certain natural beauty. So when you look out into the universe and you look at these stars and everything, this is what happens when chaos goes to natural order and complex systems. They take on a certain natural beauty to them. Our bodies are a complex system. Everything in nature is a complex system. So if your businesses aren't looking like some sort of natural beauty to them, you're probably in this still complicated space. How do we get from complicated to complex? And here's 3 simple rules that can create a complex system. These are the simple rules associated with OpenSpace. They're actually 4 principles and 1 law, but I'm just going to call them simple rules for now. There's actually 5 now, but you get the concept. So a handful of simple rules can create something very powerful. So that was my eureka moment. That's how I kind of got to, hey, this is what we should be doing. So I'm going to summarize the why of fast. And really, the why of fast is because we're transitioning from the age of mass production to the age of disruption. We need to change our mindsets. We need to work and think differently. Current agile scaling is still rooted in old ways of thinking, I feel. And complexity consciousness and understanding complex adaptive systems, chaos theory will help you into this new world. So I want to break out into some teams now where we are going to discuss how is the age of disrupting affecting your organization. Liza, can you take it from here?
Yes, and I will pass it over to Thorsten, who will break you out into rooms. And I did notice that.
So I'm hopefully you got into the right mindset now, which will then help with understanding what fast agile is and really what it's trying to do. So how does it work? And so I mentioned already that if you haven't experienced OpenSpace, it may not make sense to you, but so yeah, get to an OpenSpace event and experience this complex adaptive system. And so there's another link there to the website, fastagile.io/method, which kind of describes the method. The website, I warn you now, it's still in minimal viable state. Watch this space, it should get better soon. So I think the next evolution in Agile is building networks and not just teams. There's an image of what a network might look like. So this is your orange company, traditional command and control. Agile comes along and we're like, hey, this is great. We can create Agile teams, but then how do we scale that? We end up with this heavily siloed teams. So how do we, so I think it's breaking those silos and moving to a networked organization, and changing that network as needed, which requires dynamic team formation. Not a new concept. There's a great book by Heidi Helfand, the one on the left there, which I really recommend. I enjoyed that book a lot. And everything in there, I'm like, yes, this is what's happening in FAST. We're doing dynamic reteaming and we're doing it over and over. Not only doing dynamic reteaming, we're self-selecting into teams. So there's no chess master that says this person should be in that team, this one, like, no, we allow emergence and chaos to determine who should be in which team. So there are two great books, Creating Great Teams by Sandy Memoli, How Self-Selection Lets People Excel, and Heidi's book on dynamic reteaming. So those three images that I showed previously, they come from this book here, Team of Teams, which I feel, you know, when I read this, I'm like, this really captures exactly what we're trying to do. So I don't know if you, I'll just summarize the book, is that General Stanley McChrystal said, hey, we need to break these silos of having, so he had Marines and Army and the Green Beret. He was actually in a situation in Afghanistan, and these were heavily siloed people. They weren't talking. He goes, you know what? We're all going to come together. A situation happens. We go, here's the situation. Who can best handle it? And then they pick people from cross-functional, right, multidisciplinary. And they would go and sort that situation out. So they had like regular events or meetings where they go, here's the thing, who's going to handle it? Here's the thing, who's going to handle it? And I'm like, wow, this is very much similar to FAST. So that's why I use those images there. Another image here, I think, is that concept of distributed power or distributed decision making. So now we're moving from that, again, from that point on the left. This is Niels Fleging. There we go, Niels Fleging's book, Organized for Complexity. And you see those words come up over and over again, chaos, complexity, chaos, complexity. And a couple of words I want to highlight in the subtitle there is how to get life back into work. Because I think that's a side effect of working this way, is we're touching now onto the human movement. This is actually making life better for the people that are working inside it. No one wants to work anymore in these orange organizations. Does Klaus have a question?
Yeah, actually I have. It's a kind of broad question. It's when you're talking about team of teams, networking and so on. I heard Snowden actually talk about the difference between the formal network or the formal hierarchy and the informal.
Yeah. And
he's very much into that. The more we know each other, as in the informal network, the better. Like you know, I call you, I have a problem, and you say, well, Klaus, I don't know how to solve it, but call Peter. And I call Peter, and Peter will say, well, I don't know, but call Hans. And then I have, you know, the connection. So the better the informal network is, the better we can work in this environment. And then what Snowden says actually is that we should try to put people together who do not know each other, and only manage that, not what they talk about, but actually just getting people acquainted, so we have this extremely strong network of people who are connected in the organization in an informal way. Yeah. And that will actually lead to more trust and more agility. Yeah. Have you any thoughts about that in your model?
Yeah. Yes. So one is the idea of having people with different ideas together, which is diversity. So the more diverse your tribe, the more resilience you have, and the more innovation is going to come out of it. But one thing you said is to try to put people together. Who's going to try and do that? Some commander or controller? Right?
Yeah. The funny thing was that Snowden says, he says, well, if you put people together for just like an hour, or to a workshop or so on, then maybe they get acquainted, and then by pure luck, they will kind of be connected, depending on the chemistry, on the order of the problem or whatever. But then he says that but his experience is like, if you actually bring people together about doing a safe to fail experiment for a while, and they have diversity, and they don't know each other, then they will be forced to actually to be a little bit connected, even though they don't know each other. So now that should be the only thing that management should actually try to manage, in order to make a lot of safe to fail experiments in a short period of time, which is necessary in the complex world that we do many experiments and very fast.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned like experiments and safe to fail. That's very much built into FAST. And what isn't built in FAST is the concept of forcing people together, because but what is in FAST, which may answer that, is this concept of an attractor. So in complex systems, and in chaos, what takes you out of chaos to order is there has to be an attractor. So in OpenSpace, what are those attractors? So someone will get up in OpenSpace, hey, I'm going to talk about this thing. That is what attracts me to that person in that session. So whoever shows up is the right people to show up. And hey, there's the diversity that shows up for that session. So usually there is diversity there, and that's great. And so we're kind of relying on that. But essentially what happens in FAST, you do end up with cliques. But we do encourage people to say, try, stretch yourself and grow as well. So there's I'll talk about reasons to switch between teams and when the right time and wrong time it is to do that. But one of the reasons is because you want to stretch yourself. Like, I don't know those people. I'm going to go sit on that team for a while. But thank you for bringing that up. Does that answer your question? Yeah, I think in Organized for Complexity, that kind of really, I know Niels, that middle circle there is still a kind of a management structure, but Niels is saying, go from the left side where everything happens through the formal hierarchy to this right side where we've got distributed decision making. And so now we're really working the informal hierarchy, and the managers are comfortable and want that to happen. So that's an example of moving towards these teal patterns. And of course, FAST looks more like that model, right? So I'm going to describe the FAST process to you. I don't have a good slide deck to do it. Well, I haven't worked out yet how to do that. So I'm going to describe it just in words and hand gestures, because I do a lot of that. So you've got, we're in an agile at scale situation. So there's more than one team working against one backlog. So get those teams together, how many there are. And now those teams are one tribe. They're no longer two teams, that's one tribe, or 3 teams, or 5 teams, or 10 teams. You've now got one tribe. And I use the word tribe, I had to think a lot about the words I used, and tribe was an important word. So now we've got one tribe. We're going to throw our backlog, which I call a release map, onto the wall. And it's very similar to a story map. Let's just think story map for a while. So now there's a story map on the wall, which shows, hey, this is everything that needs doing for this release and maybe the next release. Here's what needs doing. So we'll gather the tribe together, and we're going to facilitate an event. We call this event event the fast meeting because we want it to go fast, and because the system's called Fast Agile. So at this meeting, we've got the entire tribe, and we've got this backlog of work, and there's someone that will get up in front of the meeting. This person is a leader. And when I say a leader, I don't mean a commander, right? It means a leader. If you look behind you and there's people following you, you're a leader. That's what a leader is, right? If you're leading by authority, then you're a commander. So I don't want you to lead by authority. You're going to lead because you can inspire people, right? So this leader is going to get up. I call this leader role product director. And I use the word director. I'm trying to move away from Scrum terms. So it's like a product owner, but I went with product director. And I use director because I read Ed Catmull's book, Creativity, Inc. And he talks about film directors. I'm like, you know, that's kind of what this is. It's you're creating something, and the film director is kind of responsible for managing all these things. But the film director isn't a manager either. So it's very much this kind of leadership, inspiring, big picture role. So the product director gets up there and gives a rah-rah speech. You guys are amazing, right? Use your leadership skills to really get these people together. Give them the shared consciousness, the inspirational goal that we're shooting for. This is why our company exists. This is why this product exists. This is how we're changing the world. You guys, I trust you guys. We can do it. So those kind of things. And then you're going to say, here's the state of the release. Here's what's changed since we last saw it. You know, we've got Microsoft coming in next week. If we can get these features done or enough done that we can show it to them, we've got a good chance of winning Microsoft. If we win Microsoft, that means $5 million next year. Can we do this? I think we can do this. So this is really my highest priority. So that would be something that this product director might, you know, the way they might communicate and as to what's changed in the backlog and what priorities might be. So that's all they do. And then they go. Now, when I say go, the tribe then will we use something very similar to OpenSpace, and someone will get up and say, all right, well, I'm going to be working on feature X because you know, this is part of that thing that's new from Microsoft. I'm going to be over in room number 2. Someone else will get up and say, well, I'm going to be working on feature Y because you know, I've been working on this for 3 weeks. We're still going on it. Here's, you know, I think we've got, you know, I think we're about halfway through. We need to continue this. I'm going to be over in room number 1. Someone else gets up and says, I've got some refactoring that needs to happen. We kind of got the feature done, but I know there's a whole bunch of mess in there, and I know that's going to be checked out because, you know, the future features coming up over in room 3. So I used here an example, someone that didn't pull something from the backlog, and that's fine. Someone else says, you know, I think there's an architectural issue coming up. I think there's a common component layer that needs to come out. That we discussed this, you know, way back, and now's the time to actually activate that. I'll be over in room number 5. There's someone else that didn't pull something from the wall, and that's okay as well. So I've used 2 examples of, you know, component team and feature team. And so we're just letting natural organization determine how many feature teams do we need? How many component teams do we need? What needs to happen right now? So I'm using the collective wisdom of the crowd to determine what needs to happen right now. What I described there was 4 different teams have just formed. We'll form leaders, natural leadership. So from this chaotic event, 4 attractors or natural leaders have said, this is what I want to do. Now the other people in the room, I'm there like, okay, so they're the 4 teams. I think I'll go and work on that one because I've been working on the back end for so long. I really want to get better at the front end. That's why I'm going to go to that team. Someone else go, I'm going to work on that one because I've been working on that feature. I want to see it through. That's usually what happens most of the time. So they'll go there. Someone else says, you know, Quinn Gill is such an awesome, I've heard about his legendary skills in code craftsmanship. I can learn a lot from him on how he does, how he writes code. whichever one Quinn's going to, I'm going to that one. So there's another example. So these are different reasons or attractors why you might go to one of these teams. Or another one is diversity. I'm going to force myself into working with those people because I've never worked with them before. I need to get to know my tribe better. So these are different reasons why you will go and join a team. So we dynamically form teams and we go. Those teams go and work in their given rooms. After a period, whatever the iteration is, and I'm going to say 2 days. And at Primera, we did 2 days, we did 5 days, and we went back to 2 days. So I'm going to encourage you to try 2 days. After a 2-day iteration, we come back together, and then we kind of, the goal here is to sync up with the entire tribe and to say, hey, here's what you need to know about what my team did. So maybe the leader does it, maybe someone else, what we call the swarm leader does it, or maybe it was someone else in the team, doesn't matter, but you get up and you share. Maybe you give a demo if a demo makes sense, but if what my team did was, hey, we changed the format of a log file because that was important for some integration, do you really need a demo? I'd say no. You say, yeah, we changed we changed the format of the log file. That's it. That's all you got to do. Bang, right? So it's closer to a stand-up than. So I want you to throw away Scrum thinking. To make fast work, you got to stop thinking Scrum. So there's some parallels, and it's closer to a stand-up. So then we get through show and tell, where each team has synced it back up. So now we're back in a state of shared consciousness. I know what the system has changed is. Hey, now we're together. Let's rinse and repeat. Product director gets up, goes, great, you guys are awesome, blah, blah, blah. So I've gone back to the step one. So that's the cycle, or of fast agile, of iterative development. So we clear the marketplace, and we're going to repopulate the marketplace for the next round. What teams, given what's changed, what are the most sensible teams that need to form from here? That's fast agile. So by now you've got a lot of questions. I'm not going to read this. This is here for a reference for when you come back, and it's kind of described in words what I just described. Some real key concepts are, we're moving from choreography to from orchestration to choreography. So the old world where we're trying to control everything is where we're orchestrating. So now we're going to choreography, right?
Rob,
where there's.
Sorry to interrupt. There's a question from Maiken. What is the size of the tribe? Any upper or lower limit?
Yeah. The theoretic. There's a great question. Theoretical upper limit is 150, which is Dunbar's number. And there's a lot of research that's been done into what happens after that number, like things start falling apart. And I think that describes a lot of what's happening in large organizations, because we try and go past that. So you start thrashing. So the theoretical max limit is 150. I've not worked in that yet. So I say theoretical. Max I've worked in is about 50 people, which I know works. The smallest size, so that's the interesting thing with Fast. Fast can be used in place of Scrum. So you can use a Scrum size team. So if you can use Scrum, you can use Fast. And that's where Scrum doesn't scale, Fast does. So you can keep adding people, from a Scrum team onwards. Does that answer the question, whoever asked it?
Maiken, please speak up. You should have.
Yes, it definitely makes sense.
Oh, great.
Yeah. I even tried Scrum with as low as 2 or 3 people. So this definitely makes sense also with Dunbar. It usually go chaos beyond 120 people, but it's okay.
Yeah. All right. I need to step up the pace.
Has a question if you want to take it.
Go on.
Klaus also has a question if you want to take it now. Or, yeah.
Let's do that.
Klaus.
Yeah, I'm just asking whether you have any challenges on how to deal with coordination and prioritization.
Coordination and prioritization. Yes. Hold that thought, because I think it will come out.
Okay.
Coordination and prioritization. So prioritization, I kind of mentioned before, that the product director says, here's what's the most important thing.
Okay.
Now let's say, and it's interesting because one thing that often comes up is that, well, what happens if the tribe doesn't do the highest priority thing? And my answer there is, well, you've got bigger problems. That means, the tribe doesn't really get it. But so in theory, Fast has a concept of veto. And I'll put that in there so people can calm down. So I said the most important thing is this feature because Microsoft's coming in. We get to the end of the marketplace phase. No team has said they're going to work on that feature. So the product director can use veto and say, hey, whoa, 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 whoa. Hey, before we break up into teams, I need that feature done. Let's go back. Who can pick this feature up? Tom, good man. Great. Who's going to work with Tom? You guys, all right. Come and grab me after. I'll talk to you about that. So that's how we can, how kind of prioritization works. But essentially we're using the wisdom of the tribe to understand the prioritization and the sequencing of events. Because if you try and work it out, you think you're that smart, right? I'm the super smart guy, I can work this out, and we try that and we kid ourselves that we can do that. So I want to get into this concept of orchestration versus choreography. And so this is what happens if you think of story A, B, C, D, E, and F, like I need all of these features done to get through the release. This is what it might look like in this flexible approach. Now, I stole this slide from Fred George, who does something kind of very similar called programmer anarchy. There has a lot of similarities. So this is one of the similarities, which I'm like, hey, this is what happens in FAST as well. So if this is what actually happened, and you can only tell by the end of the timeline, this is what happened and how many people worked on each thing at each given time. Do you think you could plan it ahead of time? You're not that smart. Don't kid yourself, right? And this is what we're working in this concept of illusion of control, that we can plan it, we can orchestrate everything out. And I throw this slide back up again. So instead of trying to do this, let's let this happen. Right? So we're letting go of control, which is exactly what happens. So by letting go of control, we gain order. Can you see that? And this is the big hump you've got to get past to move to fast agile. You've got to let go of control to let natural order take over. Which I feel is getting closer back to what agile really is about. That the best architectures, requirements, and designs emerge from self-organizing teams. That's going to happen in fast agile. That we build projects around motivated individuals, we give them an environment and support they need and trust them to get the job done, right? Because the only way work happens inside fast agile is that people put their hand up and go and do it. No one tells you what to do. So we trust them, we trust the entire tribe to get the job done. I pull this one up to remind you that Scrum is not the be-all and end-all, and even Ken Schwaber has recognized that. Scrum can be replaced or superseded by anything that also supports its underlying principles. That's a direct quote from Ken Schwaber. The link is there. So you can replace Scrum, and this is what we're trying to solve. So a reminder. I think we're solving corporate agile, and we're solving the Scrum at scale. I think that's what FAST really addresses. But what about? So this is when I describe FAST, there comes up with a lot of questions. So these are going to be some of your questions. We saw the size of the tribe already come up. So how do you forecast? What about retrospectives? How do we manage a backlog? Hiring, can it be distributed? What about tooling? What happens with the managers, Scrum Masters, and roles? Coaches, I can answer that really quick. I'd say one coach per tribe, and that's all you need. And you don't need Scrum Masters. So the cost of ownership of FAST is extremely low when compared to Scrum, right? Option of self-management, office layout. So have a quick look at those questions, because I think I'm really going to skip forward now with what little time we've got left and answer questions.
Yeah, there is a few questions, three questions in there.
Okay, do you want to shoot those over?
One, actually they come from, what is your name? Shirshendo. Can you please ask your questions? Shirshendo. I can't pronounce your name. You have to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So I had a couple of questions. One is, how many times has this approach been tested successfully? And secondly is, are there any indicators, like early indicators, that this approach is probably a best fit for a particular type of organization, whereas it doesn't fit that well with another kind of organization? So are there some indicators that you would take a look at before we go and apply this fast approach in a scaled organization?
Yeah. Okay, so has this been tested successfully? And indicators. I'll answer the indicators one first. So I think the slide that comes further on, because I get asked this question a lot, is how do you start? And so I think is to start with testing the waters. And I don't have the answers. I don't have all the answers. You people are really smart. So the Scrum framework doesn't have all. How do you start Scrum? That's not mentioned in the Scrum framework. So I don't have all the answers. I've got some ideas. There's the one time I did it, we started out that way. We started out as very cross-functional XP team. I think XP grows into fast very well. So I would say the indicators are run an experiment of have an OpenSpace event and see how that went, see how people reacted. Were they interactive or not? So there's an indicator. The other one is if that works, I would probably follow that up with a second one to say, hey, that thing we did with OpenSpace, we're gonna have a hackathon, and we're gonna use something very similar to OpenSpace, and you actually use fast agile to have a 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, 5 day hackathon. And you get through to the end of the hackathon and you go, hey, what did you think of that process? What if we use that as the way we work going forward? Why don't we, you guys up for doing a two-month experiment? So that's how I would introduce it going forward. And now I've had people try to introduce it, not doing that, and it hasn't gone well. So I know, so I don't know what the clear indicators are, other than I think that would be my experiment on how to do it. Tested successfully isn't, I hope that answers that question. Tested successfully is an interesting word because every test is successful in that it returns data, right? It returns learning. So as I said, I know ways it doesn't work. And that's vital information. So we got to stop thinking of tests as being, well, I guess they are successful, but tests are learning. So every implementation is a learning. And you read something like SAFe and they're going, SAFe works 100% of the time. Of course they're going to say that. They're not going to tell you about the times that it doesn't work, or how many failures did it take to get to the one time it does work. So fast is in this early growing beta period where I've personally been part of one successful implementation. And I also wanted to share later on some very similar things that other companies are doing. So it's not exactly fast, but it's very similar. And I'll use Valve, which are here in Seattle as well, as a close example of something very close to fast working.
Thank you very much, Ron. Yes,
right.
Thank you very much.
I think we got 7 minutes left.
That's correct.
I have.
Yeah.
And that's the one about the formally authorized managers.
What happens with them?
Yeah, exactly. What is your
what's my experience? So my experience is they need to change their mindset for this to work, very much so. They need to move to like the teal mindset, the complex adaptive system. They need to let go of control, which is really hard because the whole system is about letting go of control and letting natural order take over. So there's a very much a panic point, and you'll hear that in teal transitions anyway. And this is why I consider FAST as much a teal framework as a scaling agile framework. So bear with me 1 second. So the more you're open to, you know, self-organization, self-management very much leads on from organization. Like where do those boundaries exist? And so they lead into each other very, very quickly. So we talked previously about indicators. If you're in a very strongly orange organization, it's not going to work. You need to have, you know, you really need to be in a progressive organization that is, yeah, a progressive organization like a startup is a really good example of a progressive organization if they haven't already gone too far down that mechanistic path. So, and if you're going to move to teal, and the same thing when you move to fast, what do the managers do? I'm like, hey, you're part of the tribe. What do you want to do? How can you add value? Go add value. Now, managers have authority, you know, which the rest of the people don't. So they can use that authority to clear blockages. So what does this tribe need outside of the tribe? Hey, I'll sort it. I'll use that authority to go and get us monitors, to get us office space, to get us access to things, right? So that it's kind of more of a Scrum Master role, but that's what managers can do. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so what you're saying is that the managers will actually, they will keep their authority, their decision authority. Is that what you're saying?
Not decision authority, but they can use their authority to clear blockages.
Then I don't understand what kind of authority they have.
Okay, so in Scrum, when you're blocked, it's called a, what's what I'm looking for?
Impediment.
Impediment. Who clears impediments? Scrum Master. So in Fast, we don't have Scrum Master. So if we've got impediments, and those impediments are, I've got dependencies outside of my tribe, like I need hardware, or I need access to something, to my enterprise system. This is where a manager can use their authority to get that stuff done really quick, much quicker than anyone that doesn't have authority. So that is how you use your authority as a manager. So I'm not making decisions for anyone, I'm making decisions for myself, and I'm offering to help, just as if anyone else is doing. Does that answer the question?
Partly, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, all right.
There is a suggestion here. Henrik Kepler, will you, maybe it's not a question or it's just a comment, but you're free to speak up if you like. Can't talk. Okay, that was just a comment.
Okay.
Okay, we have 5 more minutes to go. I'm not sure, maybe Torsten will have a say on.
I have a quick, this is Niels speaking. I have a quick question. So this model, it has a lot of resemblance to another way of organizing companies, and that could be sociocracy or holarchy. There's a lot of resemblance towards that. And then you can say, how do you organize work in such a company? And then you definitely will look into OpenSpace technologies. You also find that in OpenSpace, what's called Agility, OpenSpace Agility by David Mesnick, very similar, I would say, to this. So the real challenge here is the journey from, you also said that in the beginning, the mindsetting from the orange mindset to the blue mindset. I think that's the challenge where most of us are facing today.
Yeah.
So it's about giving up control, giving up power. I think that's the key to a lot of this in any aspect. Have you any comments, or how do you see that that progress?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you mentioned sociocracy and holacracy, which are very much in that teal realm. So Fast Agile is designed to do one thing, which is to organize people around work. That's it. So its values are very compatible with any company that's doing sociocracy, holacracy. Its values are very compatible, so it's going to work really well in there. And so they're very complementary. So I can be part of I can be inside a company, a holacratic company, and we can do fast agile just fine because we've got a bunch of teams that need to work together. We'll go, hey, instead of being teams, let's make a tribe and do dynamic reteaming, and we'll use this thing called fast. In fact, no, when you look at the slides later on, I actually have a slide of how fast can integrate with SAFe. So SAFe is an enterprise agile solution. Fast isn't. Fast, it was only designed to do one thing. Fast is a scaling system, but it's not an enterprise solution. So there's things inside SAFe that fast doesn't even address. So you can use fast with things like SAFe. You can use fast with holacracy, sociocracy. You mentioned Daniel Mezek. So yes, Daniel Mezek, that comes up a lot when I talk about this, because Daniel Mezek uses OpenSpace as well. So I think OpenSpace agility, and yeah, which is it used to be called OpenSpace for Agile Adoption, and so that's the key differentiator between what Daniel's doing and what I'm doing. Is that Daniel's tool set is around agile adoption. That's it. So he uses OpenSpace to adopt, and you can use Daniel, which I would recommend. You can use Daniel's system to adopt fast. You can use Daniel's system to adopt Kanban. You can use Daniel's system to adopt Scrum. So that's what Daniel does, and OpenSpace is part of that. So that's his relationship between OpenSpace and Agile. Whereas I use OpenSpace as a core piece of an Agile scaling framework.
Ron, we are about to run out of time. I'm thinking whether we should continue the questions for a little bit longer for those that want to continue. Would that be okay with you?
I'm happy to stay online.
Because then before we do that, I just want to thank everybody for coming, and I'll share a idea board. So if you have to leave now, if you don't want to continue to take part in the conversation, you might have a meeting or something, then please fill in the two questions here, so to give us some feedback on this session so that we can use that for improvement in the future. So thank you for joining. And back to you.
We need the link to the...
It should be, or did I, or maybe I didn't, no. I was in.
People are living very fast now.
Okay, here it is, here it is, so yeah.
Super. So we really appreciate your feedback. So if you have maybe like 1 minute, please go and share anything that we can change.
And for those that want to that have questions that you want to discuss with Ron, we can keep the session running a little longer.
Yeah, and I'm also very interested. It was really interesting to have this OpenSpace agility brought up. I'm actually working with Daniel, and I was really thinking, how does it fit in, and also where at the organization level does fast fit in, and thank you for really highlighting that. And also mentioning Niels Flagging's Organize for Complexity, because I was very curious to really find out where are the interfaces between fast and what we have discussed today. So thank you very much for highlighting that. I really feel like there's so many things that I would like to discuss with you, Ron, and maybe somebody else to really, you know, how would this work and how could that work, just to give to get some ideas. Really, really interesting. There was one question.
I see that Bo Fraser has raised his hand.
Okay.
Just a quick question. So OpenSpace, as I understand it and remember it, there's no plan up front. The ideas of what to do comes from the participant. Is that the same way you do in FAST, or is it more traditional backlog like we do in Scrum?
There is, it's kind of a combination. So if you read the book OpenSpace Technology, what happens in OpenSpace is we create a bulletin board first, and bulletin board is where you everyone dumps down everything that they've got on their mind. So before they start an OpenSpace event, you populate this bulletin board. And so I kind of, because when I was trying to figure out, hey, how do I map an Agile system onto, and I've yet to see a bulletin board in use as an OpenSpace event, but how do I map OpenSpace onto an Agile framework? I thought, well, that bulletin board essentially represents a backlog because people have put on there everything that they want to talk about. So then the marketplace is a subset of that bulletin board. Now an OpenSpace event can go for more than one day. And so when it goes multi-day, every day they clear out the marketplace and they repopulate it. And what you repopulate that marketplace with may come from the bulletin board, or it may be new ideas that have happened. And that is very much in line with what happens with FAST. So the bulletin board is our backlog. And that's where we try and use story mapping. And we in fact refine that to something even more useful called feature mapping, but that's another topic in itself. So we have this feature map or release map, and that is static. And then, but every iteration we populate a marketplace, and that marketplace is what needs to happen right now. That may come from the bulletin board, or it may come from whatever. And to highlight the nature of how we're in a complex space, what if two teams get up and say they're going to work on the same feature? Should that be allowed, right? Remember, this is a self-organizing system. So I would say yes. Or as if I was the product director, like, you guys are going to work on the same feature? Like, you know, what's the story here? And one team will say, well, a couple of things might happen. They might merge into one team, or they merge into one team when they start with a discussion, architectural discussion, and they go, oh yeah, we're in alignment, great. Let's stay as one team for this iteration. Or they might go, you know, we're going to go in two totally different ways. So as product director, I say, great. Let's go in two different ways to determine which is the right way. So this is like self-organization is now determining that we're going to do two paths, which came up before, right? Safe to fail experiments. So now we have two safe to fail experiments. We're going down two paths. And as product director, I'm watching very closely to go, when is the right time to stop on one path and let the other path go forward? And hopefully those two teams will work that out themselves. Or we could specify, hey, let's go down both paths, and we'll, after a month, after 3 iterations, after 2 days, pick a time box, let's sync up and say, what have we learned? And do we want to keep going down two paths? Yes, let's do another 3 days until it becomes clear as to which path we should go down. So that can happen once we go into a self-organizing system, and that's what we want to happen, because we're now in a complex environment, and that's what you're supposed to do in a complex environment, is to do multiple probes. If you listen to Dave Snowden, that's what he'll tell you. You always do You should be doing multiple probes against an unknown answer. So we're going to let it happen.
Yeah, but the actual backlog, or whatever we call it, is that owned by the tribe collectively, or are there something like a product owner or a product director that says, you know, has the business responsibility of what is it we need to do that this product should be able to do?
All right. Yep. Okay, that's a great question, and so some clarity around that. Yeah, what I'm calling the release map. And this is why I call it a feature map as well, because as the product director, the things I put on that release map are very high level things. They're features, or use the word epic, which I don't like that word, or they're big things. So if I describe what needs to happen, I'd say, hey, I need security. I need the product to do this, that, and the other. Right? So as the product director, I need to get good at describing and creating these chunks, large chunks. Now, those chunks will break down, but I don't break them down as a product director. All I do is put the largest chunks up on the wall, and that's the wall. Now, the wall does start splintering as we discover what that work is. So here's an example. I've just put up a new feature because this is the feature that Microsoft need. And we haven't started on it yet. So Tom gets up and says at Marketplace, I'm going to work on that new feature. I'm going to be over in room number 5. 4 people show up to work with Tom. Tom's got a new feature. Let's say in theory, there's 60 days worth of work there for a team of 4 people. Well, let's call that 120 days worth of work. Then if there's 120 days worth of work, and 4 people have showed up, what do you do? In a 2-day iteration, what are you going to do? And what's the first thing you do as an Agile developer? What's the first thing you do when I give you a large story, a feature, an epic?
Break it down.
We're going to break it down. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So, hey, before we can do anything, let's call in the product director. Product director, which SMEs do I need to talk to understand more about this? And he goes, great, you asked. I'm going to bring over these 3 people here. They're the SMEs. They come in, tell us about this thing, this feature. Well, this feature is flim, flam, flow. So I hear flim, flam, flow. I've just written down 3 column stories. And we moved away from that verbiage of stories and epics. We just call it a chunk. So that feature is now broken down into 3 sub-chunks, flim, flam, and flow. Well, okay, does that represent what you're talking about? Yeah, that's it, okay. Well, of those, I guess would start at flim because of blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, tell me more about flim. Well, flim needs to blah, 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 blah. Okay, so now I've got, flim is now splintered down into blah, 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 blah. Well, they're not the same thing, but it's splintered again. Does that sound right? So now I'm creating a tree. So these features actually break down into trees. And if you map back, if you get to the end of an Agile project and you map back to stories, to epics, to features, it looks like a tree. So the thing is, we're letting the tree grow organically, and we do it just enough, just in time. And this is how we do it. So I'm not breaking down that entire feature. I'm breaking down enough until I've got work for my team to do in the next 2 days. And I keep breaking it down. Great, we can do this and we can get this done now. Thank you, SMEs, you can go. We might call on you later if we've got questions, and we'll call on you later to when we need to break this down further. And we're going to look to you for feedback as we go along. We know who to ask. So everything is more organic and just enough, just in time. So the backlog breaks down and splinters. And in fact, that was one of the challenges we found when we did fast, because I envisaged a story map. Story map, because of the splintering, it's really hard to maintain. So we actually came up with this thing called feature mapping. There's a link in the deck where you can have a better look at that. But that was one of the magic things that fell out of actually doing it, was a different way of representing and tracking work. And that you can use that standalone. Like you don't have to use fast agile to use feature mapping. It can work with agile just fine. Does that answer your question?
These SMEs,
Yeah.
subject matter experts, where did they come from? From the tribe or from outside of the tribe, or just a general?
Yeah, either. So the product director will know where they are. So that's a good question. Who's in the tribe and who's out? Because obviously the developers are in. You know, you've got UX people, but then you've got people like business analysts and SMEs. Are they in the tribe or not? And my answer to that is, if what they do is like 100% related to that product, because typically a tribe represents a product,
okay,
or that project, then stick them in the tribe. So once you're in the tribe, you know, so the law of 2 feet, or they call it something different now, but that applies. Like, do whatever you need to do that is the right thing for the release at that point. So if I'm a SME and I don't join a team, it's because I don't need to be part of a team, because what I'm doing is very different. And I'm making myself available as a resource. And that's the only time I use the word resource. I never call a person a resource. A resource is more a role. So me as a SME, I'm making myself and services as a resource to the tribe. And so I'll sit outside of the teams, but I'm still in the tribe, and I attend all the tribe events.
But basically, the product director has the final say, right? Defines when is something acceptable? Is this doing what we need to do to satisfy the business, right? Just like in a normal backlog in Scrum. And the self-organization in the tribe members around who does what sounds a lot like what we already do in a small Scrum team, right?
Yes.
Within the Scrum team, then we kind of figure out, well, let's pair programming and this and so on, and that's self-organizing. Yeah. So I'm looking for, what is the difference between this and just simply making the Scrum team bigger? Say now we have a 50-person Scrum team, but otherwise, I mean, because the breaking down of stuff just in time is kind of also what a well-functioning Scrum team should be doing anyway.
Yes.
And it is broken down by the members of the Scrum team with the product manager, a product owner as the final say of when is something acceptable or not, so on. Yeah. Yeah. So
the key differences there are Scrum teams break down work during like grooming sessions, whereas in Fast we do it when we need to do it. So it's just in time, just enough. And it is the concept of a tribe is like a giant Scrum team, but 50 people. How do you cut work across 50 people? Is the question. So we go, well, why don't we use OpenSpace to work out how to cut work across 50 people? And that's what we do. We say, hey, 50 people, there's a backlog, go work it out. And so then we form sub-teams from that. And those teams are very much Scrum teams. And in fact, during the iteration, you can do Scrum. You can do Kanban, you can work from home, you could all go work at the local Starbucks, you can do whatever you want. But you make a team agreement before you start work. You go, hey, we're a team, we're together for 2 days. How do we want to work? Hey, we're going to do mob programming, we do pair programming. So there needs to be tribal agreements, but then a team needs to very quickly be able to sync up as well, because you're dynamically forming team forming. Extreme programming really helps with dynamic reteaming, because a code craftsman, which is what I call an extreme programmer, as soon as which I am, as soon as I sit down with someone else, let's say I go to a meetup and we're doing some coding. If I sit down next to someone I've never met before and we start coding, I can immediately tell if they've come from that same school of extreme programming, immediately. And if they have, we're immediately productive. So this notion of storming, norming, performing, that's not true. And you can go Google that one. Tuckman was wrong. So I think Doc Norton talks about that.
Yeah.
And yeah,
No.
that model is, yeah, it's not true.
Well
And,
kept.
In my experience, it's a lot to do with the maturity of the team. And that was also my
yes.
thought when you presented this. I mean, if you have really mature people and are highly skilled and know their craft and has
Mm-hmm.
ownership feeling of thing. I've worked in companies like where everybody was like that. And this is basically what we'll be doing. I've also worked in more average situations,
Yes.
and then it's not always like
right.
that.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. And you know, is it Steve Pink? No, Daniel Pink. With it, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Like the surprising reason what makes people work.
Presenting it.
Yeah,
he's only presenting it. So.
Yeah, it is so true. And so the more you can move towards that, you're right. So for FAST to really work well requires very healthy people. And I say healthy, they're healthy workers. Like in fact, the first thing that needs to happen before for anything self-management is, how do we resolve conflict? And how do we make decisions? Because you're in a self-organizing system now, right? There's no manager to go crying to, hey, mommy, daddy, he pinched me, right? That there's nothing like that. So that was the very first thing we had to do in our tribal agreements. If you're going to do FAST, how do we resolve conflict and how do we make decisions? Because you guys are going to have to do it all yourself. So you become an adult, you turn up at work like an adult, and you're using your adult skills. Because outside of work, we use adult skills. We know how to organize and so forth. So we're just saying, let's use these adult skills inside of work. So there does require that maturity. And how can we as organizations help build that maturity out? Is a big question, you know? And how do we, so when we were doing FAST, we had, we said, okay, mastery is important. What does that mean? How can we support you in mastery? And so we said, all right, for half a day a week, you get to work with your a team, guild. So I might form a guild around Java, right? I might form it around whatever. So we can self-organize, self-form guilds, and we encourage that. To say, hey, you know, you've got time for experimentation, you've got time to work on yourself, to do katas, and we promoted that. Because it's all linked together, right? As you pointed out. So we're not constantly flogging people saying, hey, you're not working, you're not working. We're saying, I trust you to do the right thing. That release is what we need to do. And while we're working on that release, you need to be working on yourself. You need to be working on your mastery. You need to be working on, you know, how to become a better team player. All of these things need to kind of happen together.
This is also where the networked organization and the principles and so forth will actually support FAST. And as I think you said in the beginning, that FAST actually assumes and only work in a networked organization. It will not work in a hierarchy.
So yes and no. So FAST actually creates a networked organization, and it will work it's very compatible with an existing networked organization. But you remember my very first time I got to try FAST was inside a very hierarchical organization. I reported directly to a director who reported directly to the CTO. That CTO gave us autonomy. And we were we started off as a skunkworks, kind of with a very startup feel to it. And that was on purpose. That's why I went and joined that company, because it was under those circumstances. Otherwise, there was no way in hell I would have joined that company. Because I'd been there before. I'm like, why would I work for you? And I asked my manager that. I said, if you can convince me to work for you, I'll come and work there. And he goes, no, this is going to be very different for what you experienced before. We've got autonomy. We're going to run it as a startup. We've got skunkworks. So that's why I went in. With that autonomy, we were able to create Fast Agile. So we end up with 2 tribes. There was about 100, maybe 120 people at its largest. So inside this very hierarchical company, we had one part of the organization which was doing some pretty interesting stuff. And we managed to do that for 2 years. The crushing force ended up killing it. That's why it died, because it turns out the orange, with having a teal inside an orange organization kind of irritates the orange organization. It's kind of like the grain of salt inside an oyster. So we created this pearl, but the oyster does not want that pearl inside it.
And that's maybe also why I'm thinking that FAST is more well functioning in a true networked organization, and not only this, I don't know what to call it, a hub or whatever the
highly structured. Yeah.
So within this the team of teams, or the network of teams, the ideal situation, or the ideal setup, I think.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's an evolutionary step. It's really, and how many organizations are moving out of orange, right? There's still 95+% of organizations are orange. So, you know, I think FAST is ahead of its time. You know, I didn't see a great uptick in it yet, because, you know, and that's why I started with the wire FAST, because we're transitioning still, you know, out of this age of industrialization, where management still think Taylorism, they still think command and control, they still think orchestration, they still think they can plan their way through it. You know, that's still there. The people who are managing the companies now went to management school back when they were teaching that, right? So they haven't unlearned those concepts. It's going to take, you know, the millennials for them to come up. I think before these kind of concepts are really going to come forward.
One final question, and then I think we need to wrap it up.
This open space that you do every third day, how long time does it take? 1 hour, or half a day, or half an hour, or?
Yeah, 15 minutes to 30 minutes.
Okay.
Now compare that to Scrum, right? Because you compare, and this is one of the complaints of Scrum. Scrum is meeting heavy.
Yeah.
And Scrum, you know, Scrum people, they hate it when I say that, but I'm like, go ask someone that's working in a Scrum team that isn't a Scrum fan. They go, yeah, Agile is meeting heavy. I'm in meetings all the time. So that's what, you know, that was one of the things I was trying to fix with FAST, right? There's one meeting, it's 15 to 30 minutes. So the longer the iteration length you go, like that, you know, it will go a little longer. And the larger the tribe, it'll go a little longer. But so it's dependent on the tribe length. But with 50 people, we got through it in like 15 minutes. And that's why I say when you get to show and tell, don't give a demo unless the demo makes sense. Right? Unless that's the quickest way for you to get a tribe in sync. And so demo is good because a picture tells 1,000 words. So if you can do a really good demo really quickly, do it. But otherwise, don't give a demo, which is a big change, right? So where demos really work is if I'm working through a feature or something. Let's say the example before, we got the SMEs in. I'm working through a feature or a featurelet, right? I'm working through a thin slice. I get to what I think is a completion point. At that point, I call in the SMEs. I'm like, come have a look. That's when we give a demo. I do the demo to the SMEs and go, this is the small part that we've pulled off. We want you to look at it so that we're getting the feedback. Is this what you understand of it? Are we going down the right track? We're getting that feedback there. So I'm giving that demo. My team, my small team, is giving the demo to the people who count, right? Me doing a demo to the entire tribe might be pointless at that point because it might be the wrong thing, right? So they're going, yeah, you're spot on, great. And now I've got them there. I'm like, great. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to move, we're going to enable this thing here, blah, 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 blah. Yep, that makes sense. Great. Okay, can we ask you a bit about that? And then I'm going to break down a bit more of the features, create some more tasks or stories, and then I'll let the SMEs go. So that's how demos work in FAST. They work when you need the feedback. They're not on a schedule, right? We don't do it for the sake of doing it. We do it because that's the time to do it.
Mm.
So it's very different. So one of the biggest challenges is to stop thinking Scrum. That's what I found. Like,
Yeah, I think you're
stop
right.
thinking Scrum. Scrum has become so embedded as the one and only way to work, but it isn't. And Scrum actually has problems, like corporate Scrum. Scrum itself is fine, but corporate Scrum has created problems. I'm like, we've got to stop. If you can get past Scrum and move into fast, it actually frees you up. And you're like, oh, why do we do demos? You know, why do we have agreements? When does it make sense to have acceptance criteria? Like, use it if it makes sense. So as I'm talking with the SMEs and I'm breaking things down, we'll go, okay, well, that's a really good point. Write that down on that story, because we got to remember to do that. When we got to remember to do that, that's the equivalent of an acceptance criteria. We don't call it an acceptance criteria. We don't call it a definition of done. Done is when we've pleased the SMEs. That's when they go, yeah, we like it. Good job. All right, what's next? So it's very, can you see, it's very much an adult concept versus a contract of like, you are done when these 12 things are done. Like, treat me like an adult. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ron, for taking us through the fast agile. I can't even remember what it's called anymore. So fast agile, really interesting stuff here. So thank you very much. And to those who are still online here, thank you for participating. See you next time. We have a meetup, hopefully.